And for just a few moments, I have a simple thought that I felt impressed in my heart. And I want to talk to us about helping to bring others to Jesus. Yeah, somebody said amen. Amen. Okay. Mark chapter 2, starting with verse 1. And again he entered into Capernaum after some days, and it was noised that he was in the house. And straightway many were gathered together, insomuch that there was no room to receive them. No, not so much as about the door. And he preached the word unto them. And they come unto him, bringing one sick of the palsy, which was born of four. And when they could not come nigh unto him for the press, they uncovered the roof where he was, and when they had broken it up, they let down the bed wherein the sick of the palsy lay. When Jesus saw their faith, he said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, thy sins be forgiven thee. And I'll stop there. The story continues because there were skeptics, critics of the Pharisees who did not like the fact that Jesus said, thy sins be forgiven thee. So, because my focus really is on how this man who was sick with the palsy was brought to Jesus. Recently I traveled, and I know I may have said some of this, and just that's what we do when we get to this point in our life. We are repetitive, but it'll be good. You'll get it that way if I repeat it enough times. But I traveled to California, and I went to several different churches, and I noticed something in those churches. And earlier in September, I did some traveling in the Northwest up to Minnesota and several churches there. And I was intrigued by what I saw among different churches. First of all, some of it was age difference. I found that some churches had a large number of senior, well, maybe not quite senior citizens, but 40 and above. And those churches had a sense of stability. Maybe it was because the families, several generations, were in that church. And it brought a sense of stability, which was affected the very atmosphere of the worship. Does that make sense to you? You could see that there was a vast difference from a few other churches that I visited, where actually three of the pastors of the churches these other churches I visited were ex-drug addicts. And I mean, extreme. And so even in their own presentation, their own involvement, there was like an instability. And when I say that, I'm just telling you, I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just saying this is the way it is. That I noticed such a vast difference between one generation and the next. The one that is coming on is even more affected because many of the families are broken families. They come maybe to church off of the streets, but they are broken. They're broken people. Maybe it's like those pastors. The one pastor, the one in Minnesota that I'm referring to, a very fine man, doing a great job, a lot of people in his church that he has brought to the Lord. But he gave his testimony, and he had been in prison 14 years. And now he was a pastor. And so, on one hand, a tremendous testimony of what God had done. And yet, on the other hand, many of the people that he was winning, that were filling his church, were broken people. In a sense, they were attracted, because the evangelized became the evangelizer. Am I making sense to you? That man had the ability to connect with people that were a part of the world that he came out of. Make sense? All right? And that's a great thing. So I'm not here to try and make comparison of which church is better. I'm simply telling you that it's a fact that there are rising up churches that, the other two churches that I went to that had pastors who had been former drug addicts, it was amazing the number and how they were reaching the people from this world. They had creative ideas. The one church I went to, and I walked through the door, it was like totally non-traditional. They had tables set up and people everywhere eating pizza while the worship was going on. Now, I'm not telling you I'm in favor of that, but I'm telling you, I do believe this. Paul said, I have become all things to all men, that by all means I might save some. And so I'm watching this happen, and this pastor, he was so talented, and he has a family, has 7 children. And when I went to eat with the family, they were explaining to me how this one was adopted. They took in foster care children, and then they adopted them, and they came from crack parental backgrounds. But these parents had such a heart. They had one with them that night that was just a few weeks old, that the parent had just given it up because there were so much drugs. They couldn't take care of the child, and they just gave the child away. And hopefully you're feeling the somberness of what I felt, that here's a child. I'm thankful on one hand for the father, this pastor and his wife, who are embracing all of these people who have such challenging issues in their life. While we were sitting in that service, I sat on the front row facing the front, and I knew there was something going on, and the pastor came to me and said, I'm sorry, like they had a couple of people that were high on drugs in the back, creating such a ruckus while the service was going on, and he is trying to minister the word. I'm telling you, the reason I'm telling you this is I know that today it may not be someone with a palsy. Today it may be that someone brings a friend who they could not bring themselves. That you understand their mind or their emotional state, what they have gone through has brought them to a place that surely you and I know that the only answer for our world is Jesus Christ. Surely we really comprehend that we have not become so, I'm just going to say this. I'm from, my generation is like, we're almost to heaven. Hello? You can smile, it's okay. My generation, I'm trying to say this, my generation, we had church a particular way. And I love the way we have church, but I'm just telling you, my world is changing. My world has changed. So many things have changed in my lifetime in church. I'm not even talking about the world. The world's got its own issues. But if we are going to minister to our world, That's really where I want to get to. If we're going to minister to our world, there has to be adaptation. We have to adapt to the fact that our world is that you can criticize all you want. You can blame whoever for whatever. And you can determine that they're not valuable enough to, hello? To minister to. Or we can all come to an agreement that no matter what their life, where they've come from, no matter what they've suffered, no matter what their background is, how broken their family has been, and no matter when they come, of how they may not, they may not act like us. You know, I wouldn't want to turn everybody into me. Are y'all still with me? Yes. So, I thought from this story, first of all, Jesus saw that this man's issue, his palsy, was a result of unforgiveness. Am I right? Did anybody else read that in there? Because Jesus never addressed the fact that this man had a health issue. He understood that the health issue was a result of unforgiveness. Something was going on inside the man. And oftentimes, I'm just telling, this is us, okay? Our world, whether we like it or not, we've arrived at 2020. Almost. We got a month, and we'll be at 2020. And if you look around you, maybe even in your family, maybe in your neighborhood, maybe on your job, okay? The people are affected by all the things that are going on in our world. And people are hurt. They're hurt. That's what Jesus saw. He saw a hurting man. And he knew that in order for this man to be delivered, he was going to have to be forgiven. And so he said, "Thy sins be forgiven thee." And the man, he raised the man up. But you notice the friends, what they did to bring this man to Jesus. When they got there, the place was packed. There was no room to even get through the door. And so the friends, some of them had the bright idea, well, let's just tear a hole in the roof. Now, if you were the owner of that place, surely you'd be going, hey, what's going on with my house here? Right? But is that not what happened? Those four friends they somehow were convinced that Jesus was the answer for this man's problem. And it caused them to go beyond normal. They saw there was an obstacle, but they said, well, we'll remove the obstacle. And they tore the roof open and lowered the man right down in front of Jesus. And I just say this, I'm about a year ago, not even that long ago, when was it, last summer, my wife and I went to visit Jared. And Jared has grown at church, and if you go by numbers, because oftentimes the metrics are how we decide, right? You all understand that we look around how many's here. To be honest with you, Jesus probably don't measure that way, but we can have a tendency to do that, whether or not we're successful by how many showed up. But Jared, he went to the rehabs, he went to the homeless shelters, he went to the streets, and he got a bus, and he packed those people in, and he brought them, and he's got all these people who are, can you get the picture? They got a lot of dysfunctional things going on. One lady came in with a son who was, I don't know whether he was autistic, or I'm not trying to be disrespectful when I say this. I'm trying to give you a description. That child, they had to tie him in a wheelchair, because he was very disruptive. And, if it's me, I'm like, I'm sorry, but the old way we had church had no room for that. We had no space for people who had dysfunctional problems. And I'm going to tell you, I know that, one thing, listen, I'm not interested. I like old songs, but I'm not interested in going back to what we were. Okay, you hear me? I'm not interested in going back to, because we must be a church that has space for people from all kinds of problem backgrounds to come to Jesus Christ. We cannot go back to whatever was the normal. We must be a place where if somebody stumbles through those doors, if somebody carries somebody in, if somebody is like they have an autistic child, we must have enough love in our hearts that they still feel welcome to be here. I feel the Holy Ghost. I'm just telling you, yes, I believe the doctrine. That doesn't change. All right, you understand that. But I'm going to tell you, Jesus didn't say they'll know me by the way you know my doctrine. He said the way they'll know me, that you know me, is the way you love one another. There has to be love. And, you know, my wife was giving some tips there about, you know, one of the things is respect. You know what Jared did? I watched him come down, walk down that aisle, and he put his arm around that boy that was in that wheelchair thrashing around. And he put his arm around that boy and said, I love you. I'm so glad you're here. Now, I'm going to tell you, that's not old school. Now, I'm not trying to be mean about the old school. The old school had very little room, though, for people who had issues. Hello? Well, anyway, I'm telling you what I know to be the truth. You know, it's easy to love beautiful people. Hello? But it's not always easy to love the people who have issues and problems and struggles. You know what, that lady, that mother, when they got service was over and they were going out the back door, that mother came to Jared weeping, and she said, are you gonna ask us to leave and not come back? And Jared said, why would I do that? She said, because every other church in town has told us we're not welcome there. I pray we can learn from this, that look, we need to bring people to Jesus. And when we come to Jesus, we might be like that man with the palsy. We might be like that young man that's in the wheelchair. We don't, you understand? I'm trying to get a message across that, you know, Jesus said that those that have are healthy, they don't need the physician. Am I right? Did anybody remember reading that in the book, in the Bible? But he said, if you have problems, if you'll come to Jesus, Jesus is the answer to every problem. Jesus is the answer to every problem. Sometimes even among us, we don't even know how around us people are broken. Hello? Y'all with me? Right? Sometimes we don't know how people are hurting, how people's hearts are. We put on, you know, a nice face, well, the best we got. Hello? And we come and we put on a smile and maybe we pretend. Hello? Are you with me? But maybe if we looked inside of somebody, but thank God he don't let us do that, but if we could, we might see a broken heart. We might, and you say, but they're my brother, they're my sister. Yes, that doesn't mean that we're perfect. It doesn't mean we got it all together. Somehow we got it together enough to walk through the doors and be here today. But it doesn't mean we got all of life together.